Me the floor. I join with my colleagues on this side of the House to support Budget 2024. This budget comes after the emergency budget of 2020 and the 2021 and 2022 budgets to rebalance Guyana and set the foundation for its transformation steadfastly and carefully, step by step, for the sustainable transformation of our nation, and of course the 2023 budget of improving lives today, building prosperity for tomorrow. 2024 budget, staying the course, building prosperity for all, is visionary and speaks to a future that brings hope, pride, and dignity for all of us Guyanese, even the opposition who hasn't recognized it as yet. Mr. Speaker, I've been through a lot of the budgets in this House. I think I've reached 34 so far, 34 budgets. And since 2012, the APNU opposition has become more and more irresponsible and reckless and lacking in substance during these debates. There was no difference even when they were in government, unfortunately. Mr. Speaker, we dare say that the listening public have been subjected to the vitriol of the APNU AFC MPs, who appear to be living and nurtured in a bubble of intellectual opportunism and naysay, and may I say, and in some cases, sheer intellectual bankruptcy. I say intellectual opportunism, Mr. Speaker, as repeatedly they have misquoted and misinformed about the contents of official, regional, and international reports and government documents over these last few days, as they've done in previous budgets, to prove a limited and jaundiced view of the progress Guyana is undergoing under the leadership of the PPPC. Mr. Speaker, we have heard a young MP speak earlier about the 2020 elections. And may I just ask the honorable member a question? And that is that, because certainly, Mr. Speaker, we know that a number of the election petitions that were laid in the courts have been dismissed, and that we also know that the observer missions, the United Nations, the Commonwealth, the European Union, and CARICOM all observed and stood in solidarity with the Guyanese people during the recount for the installation of the legitimate and duly elected government of this country. Is the honorable member, the young man, saying that these people, is he attacking the integrity of these international organizations who stated very clearly what had happened in Guyana? But Mr. Speaker, before I get them all antsy, they're quick to get antsy. They're blind to the physical changes taking place in every single community across Guyana, and in denial that the rapid and escalating transformation taking place all around them actually exists. They cannot understand how the PPPC government is able to do all this in 3 short years. Instead, they repeat ad nauseum the mantra copied from the honorable leader of the opposition: there is nothing in the budget. The budget will not put resources into the hands of the people. Budget is putting wealth in the hands of the PPP elites, family, friends, and favorites. Can't you come up with something more imaginative than that? Seriously? One MP went so far yesterday as to calculate that the largest wealth transfer will be 20 families in this honorable House. What was the basis for such a genius analysis? None. Just throwing sound bites across to catch the media. Mr. Speaker, I use the phrase intellectual bankruptcy because how does one explain when those on the opposite side cannot imagine a Guyana that is on the move and transformed to a modern, model nation with a low-carbon diversified economy, with transportation links across this nation, a new city, Deepwater Harbor, and of course a new Demerara Harbor Bridge, which I will get returned to later in my speech, the Quarantine Bridge, where our people can live in new housing schemes, and peri-urban and urban centers with schools, health centers, hospitals, police and fire stations, where we can produce food so everyone can have a healthy diet, where our children and grandchildren can achieve their dreams, and where no one is left behind, and we care for the elderly and disabled under one Guyana. Why do they have a problem imagining this? I have wondered why the PNC, APNU, AFC, whatever they call themselves, couldn't imagine our Guyana reaching such heights, and instead adamantly refusing to be part of this vision and transformation process, and why instead they would try to undermine this progress. Short-sightedly, they don't want Guyana to be transformed into a modern developed nation under the PPPC government. Unfortunately, they would rather sacrifice Guyanese and Guyana to undermine the progress, as it was stated at a recent opposition rally of a few hundred people, and may I say, Mr. Speaker, mostly older folks like me, and no diversity, reflecting the diversity of our country, that the PPPC, in fact, the honourable member who is in this House, stated that the PPPC government must be stopped even before the 2025 elections. Mr. Speaker, threats, intimidation, regrettably, and I say it regrettably in all conscience, I have seen young MPs on the PNC side get mauled and distracted and their political careers harmed by this PNC, APNU, AFC DNA that must be threats and intimidation and not about progress. Surely they must be envious, because in their period of government they hopelessly had no vision, no roadmap to move Guyana. One must remember that they were not starved for funds. Yes, Mr. Honourable Member, it is no problem. I know it's hard to take. One must remember that they were not starved for funds, as the PPPC governments from 1992 to now were the debt burden inherited from the PNC days in government. Despite this, the PPP left $10 billion in cash, about $450 million. We left about $18 billion in gold reserves. In 2020, when we came into office, it had fallen to approximately $600 million. The current account deficit in 2014 was about $400 million. In 2020, when we took over, was $1.8 billion. This is a height of incompetence and reckless and irresponsible leadership. From 2014 to 2019, export earners from the productive SEPA, my honourable colleague, Minister Zulfikar Mustafa, has given a breakdown on what happened to the agriculture sector. In fact, if we had taken the gold out of the equation of the export earnings in between 2015 and 2019, we were down 15%. We had gone down 15%. They gave salary increases to the public service and took it back with 200 taxes. Took out $200,000 out of the pockets of each family of this country in each year that they were in office. They scrapped the cash care program. And I remember in 2012, when the program was introduced in Guyana, that an honourable member who is present here said that the $10,000 was miserly and we should give more. Unfortunately, when the same person was part of the government of APNU AFC, the program was totally abandoned and all the children received zero. In 5 years, more than $10 billion was taken away from the ordinary working class families of our country. And assuming that the amount had remained at $10,000 per child throughout the 5 years, the fact is that over $10 billion over the period of the government was taken away from Guyana's children. Had the program continued, in fact, and had escalated in the price, in the cost, as we're doing now, they would have distributed up to $38 billion between 2015 and 2020. Mr. Speaker, they spent over $1.4 trillion between 2015 and 2020, and there's nothing substantial to show for it. My conclusions are that the APNU AFC and their mother party, the PNC, has never gone through any catharsis so as to define their ideological and programmatical vision for Guyana. They have fed their supporters a diet for over 50 years of victimology, racial division, fear and fiction and untruths, which they cannot extricate themselves from and change course. If you repeat a lie enough, you begin to believe your own lie. And so you cannot extricate yourself and refresh yourself and create a new PNC because you're so steeped in this DNA of violence, of racial division, of fear and fiction and untruths. In fact, Mr. Speaker, they have descended to such depths that the more the Guyanese people want progress, and the more the people respond to the government's programs, housing, goal, grow, win, part-time jobs, small business grants, black belly, sheep and roosters, they go into a tailspin, not knowing what to do except to pull out the one card left in the pack. Division, innuendos about race, and now a new soundbites, the new soundbites of 2024. Contractor capitalist class and PPPC friends, families, favorites, and flatters. They ignore the fact that they're becoming more and more isolated and out of tune with the people and where the people want to see Guyana become. They continue on this path, and they're convinced that they're right. They will end up in the dustbin of political parties. People want to move forward. They don't want to be dragged into the unpalatable cauldron of venom and toxicity. They want to get on with their lives, to have a house with some land, a car, their kids are able to get a good education and access jobs and create businesses or farms, fish or some gainful economic activity. That the women and young people are not left out. Over 60% of the gold scholarships are women. 44% of the household recipients are female. Same with small businesses. One of the challenges we've had over the years is the fact that we had a low participation of women in the economic sphere in Guyana. Always, all the ILO reports, all the reports. We are now reaching a point where women are becoming the dominating fact in micro and small businesses and activities. And of course, in the public sector, we already dominate. In the judges, we already dominate. In the magistrates, we already dominate. The APNO AFC, oh yeah, Burnham. Yeah, right. That's why he rigged elections so he could stay in power. The APNO AFC does not understand this forward and progressive movement of people. In fact, they cannot comprehend it. It is unfathomable to them, while at the same time, each of the MPs also benefit from the measures the PEP government has introduced, as they should. The people like the budget measures. They understand what these will bring to their lives, and they want more, and they will get more as the country transforms. But they know that things are better, and far better than under the APNO FC. Mr. Speaker, the NGOs have come forward and supported. And typical APNO AFC side, any organization that comes out and supportive of the government, they denigrate. This is their usual tactic. These are all cronies and the people controlled by the PPP. Well, Zadok Fellowship is a Christian organization that represents the majority of Christian churches in Guyana, evangelical, and they have come out with a strong support for the budget. You have the private sector, the Rupununi Chamber, which I don't have time to quote from them, but I suggest you go and read those statements because they're indicative of what are the desires of the people of this country. The root of the problem, Mr. Speaker, though, and this is my conclusion, is that the PPPC and the PNC APNO FC parties have fundamental philosophical differences. This is why they have such problems understanding the budget and the transformation agenda and vision of our country. The PPP has chosen a path at national development of pro-growth, pro-poor, based on transforming the physical infrastructure of Guyana to open up the country to modernity, new areas of production and economic activity, thus creating new skill sets and jobs, new entrepreneurs, more farmers, on a principle of no one left behind. Hence the parallel investment in Goal, Grow, Win, BIT, TVET, UG, and the new training center. New social welfare programs and the enhancement, expansion of the present social welfare programs for the poor and vulnerable. And in the health and, of course, education, housing, and water sectors, we have seen amazing changes and opportunities created. Mr. Speaker, the PNC, unfortunately, has no such vision. And let me quote from no less than the Honorable Leader of the Opposition from his speech last year. And before I get that, because this, when you read the speech of last year, which on the last day presented a 22-point plan for the development of Guyana, this is one that is reactive and knee-jerk reaction. And it seems that the two media houses certain two-meter houses, unnamed, set the toll and the subject areas, and the opposition within hours picks up the issue and runs with it. It seems unable to even generate issues it should champion. When we look at the speech of 2023 budget and the 22 proposals for advancing Guyana, Mr. Speaker, we are looking at a proposal that sees development from a recurrent budget point of view. Spend money, give out handouts, but economy has to be driven by an engine of growth, by physical infrastructure, by investments, by expansion of the economy, by diversification of the economy, not by just, well, let's increase the salary of this, let's give out this, let's give out that, let's give out that. That is not, no, what we're doing is quite different, Mr. Maipol, Honorable Member. We're doing two things. We're on two tracks, pro-growth and pro-poor. So we're not the rabid capitalism that some of you are talking about on the House yesterday. No, 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 no. This is where we're investing in the infrastructure, physical infrastructure, investing in the people of this country. But, you know, I went through diligently the proposals of the Honourable Member. There is not one proposal in this that relates to the economy. It is a proposal that came last minute. Your own people didn't even know what was coming because they'd never heard it before when you present the House. Because they didn't speak to these issues if this was your party's plan. But not one of them deal with the importance and to deal with two overarching issues we have had in Guyana for a long time, impeding the speed at which we could go in development. One was energy and electricity, which my honourable member, Charles Young Ramson, eloquently spoke about yesterday. If we do not solve the energy problem in terms of manufacturing and the growth of the economy, and also bringing down the price of electricity, it's important, because that is what has held back the manufacturing sector. It has held back many of the sectors of Guyana, including the farmers, the rice farmers, and so on. So, Mr. Speaker, this has nothing about infrastructure as a driving growth of how it will create jobs, create manufacturing. So every road we're doing, there's more sand and gravel we need, and we're using asphaltic cement, concrete. That has to be produced. This is producing more. There's ripple effects in the economy. But I've heard in this House this whole last 3 days, why are you building this? Physical infrastructure, why are you spending so much on this? It is looking in things in an analytical mind, in a silo mind, and not understanding the big picture. You don't get the big picture. You just don't. Mr. Speaker, don't tell me. Mr. Speaker, the proposals here are myopic and small-minded because they cannot see the breadth and the scope of how you drive a nation into national development, how you transform a nation. And you run on several tracks simultaneously, and there is uneven development. There will be uneven development. But you have to take the bullet and do it that way. This is myopic, as I said. Why hasn't the PNC-APNU-FC published their national development agenda? Don't tell me it's in the 2015 manifesto. Lord, don't tell me it's in the 2015 manifesto. That document is a hodgepodge of things thrown together, none of which together or on their own can transform Guyana, as it didn't when they were in government. And as I said, most of them were not even implemented. In actual fact, there isn't one, as I said, looks at recurrent budget, monetary hands-out, which cannot bring sustainable development. Mr. Speaker, the PNC has lost their lodestar. You know what a lodestar is? You've lost it. Google it. You lost it a long time ago. They are rudderless with no compass. They don't know, they're just jumping from one issue to another without having a comprehensive picture. Mr. Speaker, the people of this country judge a government by its track record. The electorate does it all the time, and that is the challenge for the governing party and the opposition parties. And it shows in 2020 that the people of Guyana chose to not vote for the APNU AFC and put them back in government. They'd had enough of the 200 taxation, which took money out of people's hands. Even the Dre cart man had to pay increase in license fees. Mr. Speaker, it was a period that we never want to return to again. The people of this country never want to go through that again. You talk about cost of living and all these things. 30,000 people lost their jobs when you were in government. What did you do for them? What assistance did you give them? Not a thing. Mr. Speaker, the ILO report, study that has been done on the impact, the socio-economic impact of the closure of the sugar estates done by the ILO, published in 2021, gives you a picture of how devastating this one act by the government was, not only on the sugar workers, but on entire communities and on the country, as Jaisuka at that time was paying and supporting all the drainage and irrigation in a country that is flood-prone. Highly irresponsible, even though they were warned in their own commission inquiry that closure of estates would have catastrophic impact. They didn't listen because they know everything. Mr. Speaker, a lot of accusations have been made in this House. Unsubstantiated, of course. Unsubstantiated. The opposition speaks of democracy, but calculatedly omit to tell the House that their government had the highest level of executive lawlessness in the history of our nation, with consistent violations of the Constitution over their term of office, which escalated after the no-confidence motion and the 2020 elections, where the head of the OAS election observer team, former Prime Minister Bruce Goldin, reported to the OAS Permanent Council that he never witnessed, quote-unquote, such a transparent effort to steal an elections. Mr. Speaker, the issue of, Mr. Speaker, they have come to us about poverty. Unfortunately, some of them have not read the UNICEF report on Indigenous women and children in the period 2017, which was published by UNICEF in 2018 and in fact was circulated in the House. This shows the terrible poverty that was existing in the interior areas for women and children because of the lack of drugs, lack of textbooks, lack of water, etc. Mr. Speaker, we are righting the wrong, the injustice that was done to our Indigenous people, and we have been consistently from 1992 building the communities, even when we didn't have money, even when the debt crisis, we were in public debt thanks to the PNC up to here. But Mr. Speaker, go visit the Amerindian communities now. Each has a health center, each has a school. In Amerindian communities have ATVs and solar panels. And to go back to the energy issue, the solar panel project, which started in 2012, which gave out approximately, if my figures are right, 13,000 household solar panels, which was still standing up to 2020. What was the view of it? This was to bring electricity to communities so that children could study. That was the objective of that. How could you as a child be studying, have no electricity, and you got a jug lamp? And this was what we innovated in 2012. In 2015, of course, it was abandoned. And the solar panels were taken and put on office of the President and State House. But Mr. Speaker, let me just give the example of Region 7 that has 22 villages, 21 villages, that 4,639 panels are designated to allotted there, of which 2,760 have already been distributed and given to the communities and accounted for, everybody signing for, Lower Mazaruni, Upper Mazaruni, Camarang, Kako, Ramadan so far. Region 7 is the most expensive region to do the distribution of solar panels because almost everything is by boat or plane. Mr. Speaker, we have references by other speakers to do with audits and procurement and other words that you're not allowing in this House. The audit reports of 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020 are filled with case after case of breach of the Procurement Act and financial regulations. The PPC report, a public document on the new Demerara Bridge in 2018, exposed the collusion of a minister and a cabinet to cancel a tender with over 20 foreign local companies and to give the contract to a company that never bid, and continued for a year after the PPC report to pay that company over $100 million clandestinely through the Demerara Harbor Bridge. This new second-hand mantra is a second-hand mantra of the opposition, of friends, families, etc., and attacking contractors. Their financiers and mentors have spoken about racial discrimination. But how does one know if a bidder is of one ethnic group or not? They ignore the thousands of small contracts at the local government level, regional and ministerial tender boards, contracts given to all ethnic groups who have a right to bid and be considered, and if responsive, they get the contract. Mr. Speaker, the raising of the income tax threshold to $100,000 per month will bring relief to an additional 13,000 people from paying any income tax and benefit thousands, including teachers, nurses, public servants, who get above that amount, who will now be able to increase their deductions by $100,000 when paying income tax, giving them more liquid cash and increase their purchasing power by $4.8 billion, an increase in disposable income, and provide $70 billion to businesses and individuals as the government's approach to contain the imported price increases, provide relief to the most vulnerable, and promote expansion of the productive activity and job creation. Mr. Speaker, we make promises as a party. We've kept our promises, and we'll continue to keep our promises, because that is the honor and the responsibility of our party to serve the people of this country, not to hold on to power and rig elections, as has been the track record of the opposition. The budget, Mr. Speaker, is a tangible expression of hope and optimism for the future. Development costs, sustainable development costs more in the initial phases. Infrastructural transformation is one of the fastest ways to expand and develop the economy and bring rapid benefits to people. And this is what we have done in the 21 to 23, investing heavily in people, especially the poor and vulnerable. How does one resolve the two overarching issues of both reliable energy and also communications? Not only ICT, but roads, bridges, aviation. We have to expend huge amounts of money on both, as expected, reflected in this budget. The revenue from the oil sector has given us the means to use these inflows now, not when oil runs out, to transform the infrastructure of this country. The legislative framework is being reformed and modernized. We brought 84 bills, including the single window platform bill, that will make doing business more efficient and less exposed to unsavory practices, because I can't call the other word in this House. Guyanese are ambitious and innovative, and they're jumping on the transformation bandwagon of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, I've heard about the accusations. Over 600 companies have registered with the local content in 2023. 1,000 small contractors have been encouraged and assisted to get registered and bid for small contracts across the country. Each of these hire 5 people minimally. By that group alone, increase in providing jobs for over 5,000 people. By the way, a number of these small contractors are female. Mr. Speaker, on the Amerindian village councils are being given contracts to build roads and infrastructure in their communities. Roads and bridges are being built. Houses are being built. Water is coming to communities that never had. Street lights are going up. Demand for skilled workers in masonry, steel bending, electricians, engineers, heavy-duty drivers, plumbers, in high demand. The country is getting more connected so that more services will be available online. We have shortage of skilled workers in many sectors, and hence the investment in the Board of Industrial Training, the TVET, WIN, GOAL, UG. And by the way, to do with UG and GOAL, this argument that is a fictitious argument that's been created by the PNC. If UG graduates 5,000 graduates every year, which I don't think they do, the GOAL in 3 years has reached 21,000 people in 3 years who are doing certificate, diploma, degrees, masters, PhD. UG is doing 5,000 per year. On average, that's 15,000. 15,000 plus 21,000 is 36,000 people in this country have had access to higher education and post-secondary school education. And isn't that something we should be proud about? And isn't that an intervention to reduce poverty? To give people a chance who could not afford, can't come to town to go to the university. One of the problems of the university is access. And therefore, the online feature is a modern innovation to bring people into the modern era and to be able to educate themselves. And again, we point out and repeat that the majority of takers in these programs, particularly Gail, are females.
Honorable Minister, for this program, you'll need an extension.
Yeah, someone gonna give me?
Thank you, Honorable AG. Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're playing catch-up after all these years, and we shall not slow down until we transform this economy, and the people of this country are to live at a high standard of living. Mr. Speaker, this is the golden era of Guyana. After 68 years of independence, we are finally showing our people and the world what Guyana is and what Guyana can become. The people know you, on the other side, better than you know yourself. They know you. They get you. They got you on their radar. They know you. Hot air, promises, sound bites, and irresponsible behavior. As I said, I have always trusted the wisdom of the Guyanese people, and I will continue to do that until the day I die. Mr. Speaker, this is a visible, accessible government to all Guyanese. And my colleagues who spoke before me talked about the community meetings, where people put up their requests, put up what they need to get themselves better in life, whether it is equipment, whether it is support for families or the very poor in the communities. Mr. Speaker, the programs are there to empower people, empower youth, women, men in our societies, to empower all of our people to be able to take the rightful place and a dignified place in our country. You know, there's a philosophy that says that two views, as I said, we have philosophical differences. The one view is give a man a bowl of rice if he's poor. The other one, give him a fishing rod and let him fish. The PPP is on the second track. Give the people the power to choose and to improve. Mr. Speaker, the IMF Article 4 reports, which are public available, and you can look at it, as are the mid-year review that we produce in this parliament, which gives you facts. Go back to the facts, not calculations of some people in their imaginations. But the IMF Article 4, over the last 3 years, has complemented and produced reports that support the position of this government in what it is doing and its program of activities, including physical infrastructure. In terms of commenting on the young member who was before me, he made a comment about Belladrum, about youth and discrimination. Why, I asked the honorable member a question. Why, when the government went to develop a youth program in Belladrum, he locked the Belladrum Community Center, and it has remained locked since then. Why? If you're so hot on youth, why would you prevent a youth program coming to Belladrum? I know Belladrum, you don't. Mr. Speaker, the center is still locked up, denying the community and the youth using the center for any other purpose. Mr. Speaker, there have been accusations here about discrimination in distribution of the programs we have for the poor and vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, I call on the opposition. If there is anybody who was left out of the COVID-19 allowances and the one-off pensions for the pensioners, or for all the other programs we did, bring the names, let's fix it. No, but you don't want to fix nothing. You want to have this mantra you can call discrimination. You are not interested in fixing nothing. You're not interested in representing the people who you say were discriminated against, who did not receive these things. But Mr. Speaker, you cannot, Mr. Speaker, the programs of this country, of the initiatives of the President, Men on Mission, President's Youth Advisory Council, are efforts and initiatives to involve people in addressing social issues. And so, Mr. Speaker, we are in a good footing. You can't, on the opposition, mouth inclusivity, but say inclusivity on your terms only. That's what it is. You want to be part of the border issue, but it's on your terms. You're invited to go to Argyle Declaration at the meeting, you refuse. You have meetings, you don't know, Mr. Duncan, be quiet. You have no idea what goes on. That is not, Mr. Speaker, the opposition must come good. Come with an open hand. The fact that they're told not to shake the hands with the ministers is a level of, I don't want to say stupidity, but maybe it is. If you don't want to shake the president, you don't want to shake the minister's hands, this is a level of asininity. And I don't know if asininity is an unparliamentary word. Mr. Speaker, time to stop, opposition must time to stop playing games and attempting to blackmail the government to do what you want and ignore the rest of the stakeholders. The stakeholders of this country, private sector, labor, religious, Amerindian, women, youth, all have a role to play. And if you're not representing, we are doing it all the time. So, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support the budget and to support my government and my president in bringing this budget, which will expedite, speed up the process, which is already going fast, of transforming our nation and improving the quality of life of all Guyanese. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable